everyone. I am so happy and blessed to be here today filming this video. I love doing this kind of thing, and today I decided to do something just a little bit different. I've got a bunch of books here that I'd love to review. I love to read, I love to write, and I love to watch book reviews after I've read them, see what other people think. And so I just decided, why not do my own? I've never really been a big digitized reader, like on a Kindle or anything like that. I love the feeling of a good book in my hand. So I have physical copies of all these books, and I am so excited to review some of them for you. This is probably going to be a two-part video because I have read 14 books since the start of October. We are now in December, toward the end of December. So I am really excited to review some books. Let's get into it. Okay, so I have all the books here with me. The first 4 books I'm going to talk about are actually in a series. Now, I didn't originally know this was a series when I picked it up, but it ended up working out really well. So the first book in the series is called Voices in the Snow. This is by Darcy Coates. I think I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but I originally, like I said, did not know that this was a series. Now, this is called the Black Winter series. Each one of these on the front says a Black Winter novel, and there's 4 books in the series. So basically, to start off with this series, this book follows a young woman named Claire. Now, Claire is mostly to herself. She likes to read a lot, most like me. I feel like I can relate to Claire a lot. And basically, something happens, and I'm going to try not to give too much away into this series talking here, but something happens that's apocalyptic, and she finds herself driving to her aunt's house to go pick her up, and together she and her aunt are going to head over to her sister's house. And they're going to ride this, I don't want to say apocalypse, but ride this situation out together. Now, on the way into the woods, Claire passes some abandoned vehicles. She starts to get really nervous, and she loses cell reception, and she's unable to make contact with her sister. Now, once she gets into the secluded forest, something happens, and Claire's car ends up going off the road, and she wakes up and she has amnesia, so she can't remember anything about the accident. She can't remember why she was going through the forest. She can't remember anything. Now, she's actually rescued from her vehicle by a man named Doran, and he's about her age, and he lives in a secluded estate inside the forest. And so he doesn't have access to radio, television, anything like that, so he has no way of knowing what's happening in the outside world. And Claire knew everything that was going on, but since she has amnesia, she doesn't remember anything. So he finds her and takes her back to his estate. It's a giant family-owned estate, and it's just him there. And he explains that he's there by himself, that he found her on the side of the road, and that he can't get through on the phone lines because they're down. And they originally think, oh, the phone lines are down because of this storm, when in reality, later in the book, you begin to realize what this event is and what has actually happened to the outside world while Claire and Doran are secluded inside this estate in the woods. Now, I would definitely say that this series is a slow-burning series at first. You start off with, you meet Claire, you meet Doran, and the first book has its issues, but I feel like the first book really lays the foundation for the series. And as you get to know these characters, it becomes, you're not able to stop reading, basically. I read the first 3 books in probably less than a week, or maybe a week, and then I had to order the 4th book in the series because they didn't have it at the bookstore yet. Thankfully, it came in rather quick, and I finished it. And just, wow, I can really personally relate to the main characters in this book, especially Claire, but Doran too, because Doran is different. He has his own quirks, and altogether throughout this series, I feel like Darcy Coates does an excellent job of character development and getting inside these people's heads and putting people in situations that really fit the theme of this story. So I would definitely give this book this series a 10 out of 10. I loved it. It was amazing. The entire series. And I love to own the books I've read, by the way. I love to see them. I love to have them up. So I have all these books as a physical copy. I never really read on a device or anything like that. I like to have the physical book. So yes, the Black Winter novels were excellent. Darcy Coates did a great job. I know that the Black Winter novels are sort of out of her comfort zone. I know she writes a lot of haunting kind of books, and this was different in its own way, and I really, really think she did an excellent job. Now, the next book I'm going to review is a classic. It was an instant classic when it first came out. It set the foundation for a lot of books and movies nowadays, and this is Lord of the Flies. Now, if you haven't read Lord of the Flies, or if you're a first beginner kind of reader, this book, I'm not going to lie, though it is shorter, I thought it was kind of complicated to read at first. It was different than what I'm used to. Now, this book was written back in, I believe it was the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. And it follows a group of British boys who were in a plane crash on a deserted island. And these are all boys under the age of 13. So it really dives into, how do I put this? What humans would act like when they are put to the test, when their humanity is put to the test. These are just kids, they're all young, they don't have any adult supervision, and it really is a psychological issue for these boys. They begin to split up, they begin to click with different people, and they begin to fight. And especially as children, and even as adults, when ordinary people are put in extraordinary circumstances, bad things could happen, especially if they're not in the right mind to begin with, and especially if their minds are underdeveloped and they are children, like in Lord of the Flies. Now, Lord of the Flies, I love the cover of this book, by the way. It has a lot of secret imagery in the side. This particular copy has the introduction by Stephen King. It tells how when Stephen King was a boy, he picked up this book and read it. Now, when you first get into the book, like I said, a lot of the chapters are longer. Some of them are shorter, and it is bigger print. This particular copy is, and it is a shorter book. I finished this in I think 2 or 3 days, and I didn't follow it at first. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was sort of difficult to understand. Like I said, it was out of my particular reading comfort zone, but I decided to read it because I've heard great things about Lord of the Flies, and it really, really opens your mind into thinking about what these kids were going through at the time. You know, they were left alone, deserted on an island, and there's a lot of imagery in this particular book, a lot of representation of objects. If you go back and look, there are certain things that happen in the book that represent shifts in human behavior among these kids. There's a lot of symbolism in this book around one of the main characters. Piggy is what they call him, and his glasses represent certain things, and if you go back, there's just a lot of symbolism that you could easily miss if you don't look into it, which is why after I read this book, I went on Goodreads on the internet, and you find a lot of the symbolism that you maybe didn't pick up on at first. And without giving too much away, that's the basis of the story. They're by themselves on a deserted island, and they sort of start to click together. And you know how people can be, especially younger kids, when someone's different, or when they find people that think different things, you know, they sort of click with the people that they feel most comfortable with, and that's not always the best thing. And in Lord of the Flies, this ends in turmoil, honestly. And it just really, like I said, sets the foundation for a lot of books, novels, and films for today. Sort of that Lord of the Flies concept. It's almost like you're watching an ant farm. You know, these people are secluded and you're just watching them go nuts. And they can't do anything about it. They just have their own human instincts to rely on. So I definitely think Lord of the Flies was a great book. It's definitely a classic. Moving on to, what is this? Well, this is technically like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th book, but this is the, the one was a 4-part series. Anyway, this book is called 5 Total Strangers by Natalie D. Richards. This book really caught my eye on the shelf because of the cover really just stood out to me. And the front cover says, she should have never accepted that ride. Now I'll read the back of this. Myra needs to get home for the holidays, badly. But when an incoming blizzard results in a canceled connection, it looks like Myra might get stuck at the Philadelphia airport indefinitely. And then Harper, Myra's glamorous seatmate from her initial flight, comes to the rescue. Harper and her 3 friends are renting a car, and they can drop Myra off along the way home. But as their trip begins, Myra discovers her fellow travelers aren't friends like she thought. They're total strangers, and every one of them seems to be hiding something dangerous. Soon, Myra is in a panic. The roads have gone from slippery to terrifying. People's belongings are mysteriously disappearing. Someone in the car is clearly lying, and Myra begins to suspect that one of them is sabotaging the trip. If she wants to make it home alive, she'll need to uncover the truth about these strangers before this nightmare drive turns fatal. They did a very good job suckering me in to buy this book. I wouldn't really say suckering me in, but she thought being stranded was the worst thing that could happen. She was wrong. This was a really, it was a short book, honestly. I finished this in 2 days, and I really liked it. I liked it altogether. The characters, I would say Myra isn't particularly relatable to me, because I don't know if I would accept a ride from 4 total strangers, making us together 5 total strangers. But Myra doesn't know that they're all strangers at the time. And basically, Myra finds herself again in that ant farm theme. She is in this SUV, which is a luxurious SUV, but with 5 people inside. It's so cramped. She doesn't know any of these people from Adam. And soon things start to happen, and it's not good. And paired with the treacherous weather and their traveling experience, it makes it all the more terrifying because she doesn't really have a choice to say, okay, I'm going to get out of this car on the side of this horribly snowy, blizzardy road and go off on my own. She really can't do that. She sort of has to rely on these 4 strangers that she has put herself with. And yeah, strange things begin to happen to Myra along the way. Things go missing, and it's not just her that starts to realize it. It's other people in the car, and soon they discover, well, if everybody in the car is suspicious, somebody's faking it. It has to be one of us that is doing these things that is really scaring the other passengers. And yeah, this book really pulls you in. It's a really kind of whodunit kind of book. I really liked it. It was a fun read. I really liked reading it. There were some parts that had me really on the edge of my seat, like, I can't go to bed yet. I have to flip the page. And the front cover really does a good job of isolating, sort of showing how lonely Myra is in this situation. You've got this all white backdrop, and right there in the middle is the vehicle they're in, and it's all alone. There's no one that can come save her. And it's just, it's an unfortunate situation. It's an unfortunate situation for somebody like Myra to have gotten herself into. And in the future, Myra, though she is a fictional character, I think she will learn to make better decisions on herself and learn to observe the people around her more and to not be so trustworthy to people she doesn't know. But that was definitely a good book. I really liked it. I finished this one just before Thanksgiving. Now, The Ruins. One of my all-time favorite books. There was a film adaptation to this book that you might have seen. I watched the film when I was younger, and I didn't even remember until after I read the book and looked up the synopsis, the analysis of the book. I like to do that after I read the books. That there was a film to it, and I recognized the film immediately, but I really got so into this book and imagining these characters in my head that I didn't even relate the book to the film at all. The Ruins by Scott Smith is an excellent, excellent horror novel. I'm going to read the inside of the front of it here. Eerie, terrifying, unputdownable. That is true right there. The Ruins follows two American couples just out of college enjoying a pleasant, lazy beach holiday together in Mexico. As, on an impulse, they go off with newfound friends in search of one of their group, the young German, who, in pursuit of a girl, has headed for the remote Mayan ruins, site of a fabled archaeological dig. This is what happens from the moment when the searchers, moving into the wild interior, begin to suspect that there is an insidious, horrific other among them. ... This book was excellent. 10 out of 10. I loved this book. Basically, the four American tourists are down in Mexico on holiday or on vacation. And while they're at this luxurious resort, they meet this man named Matthias. And he is from Germany on vacation in Mexico as well with his brother. Now, his brother had went off a couple days prior with this woman. And the woman said, "Oh, I'm an archaeologist. We're doing this dig out at this really nice secluded spot off the grid. You should come with me." So Matthias's brother goes with the woman. And his brother hasn't come back, and they're about to miss their flight. And so Matthias decides that he has to go find his brother. His brother has left him a map of where this dig site is. And he brings this to Josh's attention. Josh is one of the four American tourists. And Josh is sort of the leader of the four tourists. It's two couples. And he says, well, let's do it. We're here. Let's go see some ruins that are off the grid. And so the other three tourists agree. You know, some of them have their doubts about it, but they all ultimately decide to go. While they're at the bus station waiting to catch the bus, they run into a Greek tourist who calls himself Pablo, which is not his real name. And they don't find out that that isn't his real name until later when they end up going through his things. And Pablo asks if he can come with them. And they say, of course, you can come with us, the more the merrier. So basically these six people end up going into the Mayan jungle, the secluded Mayan jungle. And they find a path where Matthias's brother has drawn the map to. Now this path is covered up as if the Mayan villagers do not want anyone traveling down this path, but because this is a horror book, they do anyways. Now, Josh is leading the way, you know, he's sort of pushing his way through the jungle, and they come upon a clearing. Now, when they come upon this clearing, the Mayan villagers that they had seen inside the jungle storm out on horseback, and they're speaking, they're giving warnings. But unfortunately, none of the six people in this group can understand what this Mayan man is saying. And he cannot understand what they are trying to communicate either. It's a real problem of their language barrier. None of them can communicate. And so they know that this Mayan man is very upset. He does not want them near this particular dig site where Matthias's brother went. And as they're all arguing, Amy, one of the tourists, Josh's girlfriend, is taking pictures with her camera. And she tries to step back to get a big group shot of everyone. And as soon as she takes the picture, she steps on a vine. Now, without giving too much away, this is sort of the crossover. The Mayan villagers who have gathered around see that Amy has touched this mine, and that's when it's the point of no return. Now they're not trying to get these tourists to leave and not go up to the dig site. Now they're saying you have to go to the dig site. You have to go up that hill and you cannot come back down. So they force these tourists up to the dig site. More of the Mayan villagers come out, and soon they find themselves surrounded. This dig site is on sort of like a hill, and it's covered in vines, and they don't really understand, none of the main characters really understand what's happening. And it isn't until a few pages after they are forced on the hill, they realize that the Mayans won't let them leave the hill. They are being quarantined, and nobody really understands why until a little later in the book, and I don't want to give too much away, but this is definitely a good read, an amazing read, my favorite. I would read this if this was the only book in the world. I love this book. And you really get to know the characters and their situations, because you really get inside the minds of all these people, and it sort of conflicts you, because you get to know one person's perspective and you're like agreeing with that person, and then it switches to the other person that they're arguing with, and then you sort of understand their perspective too. Basically, everybody is just frustrated because they're trapped on this hill. They're trying to ration what they have, use the resources that they have with what they're given, and this is like that theme, like Lord of the Flies, and the ant farm theme, like I like to call it. These people, just like you and me, their mental state deteriorates, and soon they are forced to literally just live off their primal instincts. They're not thinking clearly, they're dehydrated, they need help, and they can't get the help, and they basically are just stripped to their basic needs of survival. There's nothing they can do. There's nowhere they can go. They're trapped with each other. And it really goes to show, you think you know people, you think you know your friends, and these four tourists thought they knew each other very well. And unfortunately, just the way this book plays out these scenarios, it's a lot of unfortunate things happen to these good people. And toward the end of the book, at the end of the book, you sort of just sit back. You know, I know after I was done reading this, I just sat back and had to take it all in, because I was just like, these people that I got to know, that the author did such an excellent job in portraying these characters. I just had to sit back, because the character development, the storyline, it haunts me. And I think this book did what it was supposed to do as a horror novel. This is one of the best books I have ever read, and I love this book. This is an excellent book. And now our final book of this video. I just finished this. It's called Something in the Water. So, Aaron is a documentary filmmaker on the brink of a professional breakthrough. Mark is a handsome investment banker with big plans. Passionately in love, they embark on a dream honeymoon to the tropical island of Bora Bora, where they enjoy the sun, the sand, and each other. Then, while scuba diving in the crystal blue sea, they find something in the water. This book, definitely, I went in blind. You know, I read the back of it, and it really doesn't give anything away. I didn't really know what kind of book this was. I picked this up in the mystery and thriller section at Barnes & Noble, actually, which is different because I usually read horror books, and I decided why not. And this book really threw me for a loop. I was not expecting what happened in this book. This book follows Erin, our main character, who, like I said, is a documentary filmmaker, and her husband, Mark, who is an investment banker. And Mark and Erin soon, they're in love. They're a strong couple. They love each other to the moon and back. But soon things start to go wrong. Mark ends up losing his job, and Erin can't pay the bills by herself because she's a struggling documentary filmmaker, and Mark can't seem to find work, and it's sort of like they're in between a rock and a hard place. They're getting married soon, and they need the expenses for their wedding, and they can't exactly afford to go all out like they want to. And they just decide to make some cuts in some places that it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, just as long as they're together and they're happy. And they end up going on this honeymoon that was originally supposed to be 3 weeks in Bora Bora, but they ended up cutting it down to 2 weeks in Bora Bora because it was all they could afford. Their one last splurge before finally sort of backing off and saying we need to reevaluate our spending habits, we need to save, and we need to hunker down until Mark can find a better job. Now, while they are on their honeymoon in Bora Bora, they sort of come to terms that, money doesn't really matter. Just as long as I have you and you have me, that's all that matters. And a storm rolls in while they're on their honeymoon, and Erin says, let's go out to the beach during this storm and let's scream and let's go in the waves and just let all this negative energy loose. And for that one moment in the book where it talks about them out there on the beach when it's pouring down rain and they're screaming, they sort of realize, we could have all the money in the world or no money in the world. They're just happy with each other as a young couple. And I want to say that right there is the last point of innocence in the entire novel. They are with each other, they're happy, that's all they want is each other. And sort of after that moment, after that storm, is when everything really takes off. Everything hits the fan, and Erin starts making bad decisions, and so does Mark. And quite literally, in the first chapter of this book, the very first few pages, Erin, our main character, is literally digging herself into a hole. And if she doesn't stop digging herself into a hole, she will not be able to get out. And if that's not symbolism for the entire novel, I don't know what is. Excellent symbolism, coming back full circle at the end of the book to the first chapter. It really showed that her digging herself into that hole represented her entire journey through the novel. And in the beginning of the novel, you really don't know what to think of Erin. She talks about she's digging a hole, and you're like thinking, okay, like, why would she be digging a hole? Like, this sounds like something like, I wouldn't do this personally, and like, I don't know anybody who would. Like, she must be crazy. And then she tells her story, and by the end of the book, you realize that Erin is just about as pure of a person you can get. She's never even, I think it said she'd never even had a speeding ticket. And for her to get herself into so much trouble just shows how far some things get flown off the hinge. You start digging and you start lying, and soon you're in your own grave. And this book definitely has a great message to it. I really thought this was an excellent mystery thriller book. I know it was a thriller for me. I was like freaking out like I actually knew this person, And they do a good job of connecting you with the main characters in this book and making you feel for what Erin is particularly feeling, and then sometimes even what Mark is feeling. And so I thought this was an excellent read. All right, and that's all for today's video. This was really fun to make. I love making these videos, and I love my books, and I really hope you guys do too. Reading is a hobby I've always had. I love it, and nothing beats a good book. I have a giant collection, and I'm so proud of it. So yeah, give me a like or a comment, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.